Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Doom Productions podcast. We have a very special episode for you all today. Earlier this week, Ethan, Zach, and I got the chance to sit down with Mridul Chhibber, one of our favorite YouTube filmmakers, and talk with him about his new movie called Egomaniac, which is coming out later this month. And we got the chance to talk to him about all sorts of things, from his new movie, why he dropped out of film school, Kanye West, Avatar, James Cameron, Hollywood, and all sorts of different topics, which I'm sure you all will love to listen to. Now, little warning, the audio we recorded was directly from Zoom, so the audio is not as crisp and as clear as it usually is, but you can still understand what's being said. So hopefully the awesome conversation that we had makes up for the decline in quality of audio. And so without further ado, let's get started with our interview with Mridul.
I don't think I have to explain anymore. Like, it's just...
That's fair.
I felt
totally
like
fair.
my brain slowly being brainwashed, and yeah, I feel like this year has been about fighting the brainwashing.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah, welcome back, Mridul.
Yeah, it feels good to be back.
It is awesome to get to speak to you again. It's been a while, I feel like. When was the last time we did a call video like this?
Probably middle of last year. Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
Too long.
Yeah. Was it would it been for your movie or our movie? Because I know we kind of did a little bit of back and forth for a little bit.
Yeah, I think it was on my channel for a film. I think Video Carnage. For Video Carnage, we would have done an interview.
That sounds about right. Yeah. So it's been a while, and before we even get into you, I gotta mention, like, I remember when you were talking to us way back then, a couple of times you mentioned a fellow filmmaker down in Australia. We were like, just wait, guys. He's going to blow up. He's going to be the next. He's working on a 3-hour epic. And when we finally saw that movie, Void Man, for anybody who is listening and doesn't know, man, it blew us away. Like the scope of everything. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, like, that was awesome.
Yeah, so me and Mohit actually met online from our YouTube channels, and now we've become like really close. Like, he's pretty much like my best friend, you know, like we're like, we talk pretty much every few days. And yes, and Void Man, I feel like he really showed what he was capable of, and like really reached his potential at that time. And whenever anyone can do that, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it was awesome. And to see him in your preview too, like that was a shocking moment for us, of just like, oh my gosh, Mohat's in this too. Like, this is all the Australians are coming together. It's great.
We had to give that, you know.
Yeah.
Some well, you can't recognize anyone else, so it's good to be able to watch the trailer and recognize more than one person, you know.
Yeah.
It was an Avengers level moment.
It really was.
For sure.
I think a brief introduction is in order for any of our viewers, listeners who aren't familiar with Mridul. Mridul is a filmmaker from Australia. He made a movie in 2021 called is this The Last Day of Childhood, or The Last Days of Childhood, right?
The Last Day, yeah.
Right. And it was one of my favorite movies of the year. It's one of my favorite YouTube movies. If you go to Dan Lotz's playlist of all the YouTube movies, I'm introing that one. I forget how I described it, because I feel like I had it perfectly summed up there, but it is a wonderful work of art. It's a great work of cinema that just kind of, to me, gets to the heart of what movies are, which is expressing, delivering an emotional experience to the audience through the manipulation of time and space. And The Last Day of Childhood blew me away completely when I saw it. And when it came out, I think we interviewed Mridul back then, and he's interviewed us for our movie, Video Carnage, which came out around the same time, I want to say, within a couple of months.
Yeah, within about like 3 months.
Right. And so Mridul has been on a journey a filmic journey, making his
Indeed.
next picture, and the trailer for his next one is out right now. Tell the audience what it's called.
So yeah, my next film is called Egomaniac
Mhm.
with a Heart of Gold.
Mhm.
Yeah, so for the longest time I didn't know what it was called until I released the trailer. I wasn't completely sure of the title, so I'll just refer to it as Film 2
Yeah,
because things keep changing. I've learned
right.
that in the last few years. But yeah, it's something that has been just exploration of all the ideas that have been in my mind for the last 2 years. It's very
Mhm.
different from The Lost Day of Childhood. I feel like they have the same blood, but
Mhm.
kind of complete opposites, you know? If I had children, it's like one of them is quiet and emotional, and one of them is angry, and you know, it's the complete opposites. I hit the invert button, and that's what came out.
That's awesome. Take us through your journey because it's been a while since you kind of, I mean, you've posted semi regularly videos on and off on
Yeah,
YouTube, but in
on and
terms
off.
of like, this is your next big feature since Last Day of Childhood, your debut feature. And so, talk to us about what that transition was like coming from your first feature going into your next one. Was it a thing you knew you wanted to do right away? Was it something you realized later? I mean, in
Yeah.
short, what have you been up to? What led to Egomaniac?
Yeah, so basically, a month after I released The Lost Day of Childhood, I had this trilogy planned of The Lost Day of Childhood,
Hmm.
Thank God for Drugs, and Egomaniac with the Heart of Gold.
That's right. That's right. Sorry to interrupt. You showed us
Yeah.
this little piece of paper with all these ideas. I remember this now in one of
Yeah.
our meetings. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was kind of where my vision was at. I was really focused on fulfilling these. All of them are kind of related. And so I started working on Thank God for Drugs, and basically that project just collapsed. And after that, I feel like film one, Laws of Childhood, was like, you know, raising a little baby, and film two has been like climbing a mountain.
Hmm.
And film two was always gonna be about becoming a man,
Hmm.
and what that means, and what the worst parts of my masculinity kind of
Hmm.
are. Because in film one, The Lost Day of Childhood, I kind of show my more feminine side, I would say, my more sensitive side. I literally show myself crying, and throughout the next 2 years, I guess, um, my inner landscape really changed, and film two is a depiction of the worst parts of that and the
Hmm.
ugliest sides of myself. And yeah, so then after Thank God for Drugs collapsed, I started working on Egomaniac with the Heart of Gold.
Hmm.
And some other stuff happened in my personal life, which made me just put a hold on that for a bit. And yeah, and then now 7 months later, I'm I've come back making Egomaniac with a Heart of Gold, changing it up a lot from what I originally had it as an idea.
Right. Right. That's awesome. So was this filmed over the last 7 months, or what was the filming process like?
The footage, there's actually some footage from Thank God for Drugs because I had
Okay.
some of that filmed. There's
Mhm.
some footage from that. There's some footage from the original Egomaniac that I was making 7 months ago,
Mhm.
but most of this is new stuff. I would say I started. Look, honestly, I started very recently, like a few months ago.
Uh-huh.
But there are bits and pieces that I started filming maybe in June, July. But I would say the majority of this was made pretty recently, like the last few months.
Nice. So this is like brand spanking new, pretty much.
Brand spanking new.
I
Yeah,
like
that's
it.
how I like to roll.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. And so in terms of if people have seen Last Day of Childhood, that kind of movie, is this similar in terms of that style of filmmaking? or is it something a little bit more narrative driven, or is it more editing driven and kind of technique driven? I mean, how would you describe it?
Well, I'm a big fan of editing. I love editing. Even The Lost Day of Childhood, I would say, was
Mhm.
quite editing driven. Even this is quite
Right.
editing driven.
Right.
But this one is a fictional narrative, I guess.
Hmm.
And I guess with each of the three films, I'm getting closer to what you would call a real movie.
Hmm.
So this is this is fictional, but it's very obvious how it translates onto the artist's inner world and life, and the metaphors are pretty obvious, I would say.
Hmm. That's awesome. And so, reveal what you wish to reveal, but can you give us any in terms of that loose narrative or that narrativeness? What can we expect from it?
So it is a narrative.
Hmm.
To make it, I actually had to write kind of five separate short films.
Hmm.
Um, Look, I view it as a feature, but just to be able to process the writing bit, I had to write it and as five separate arcs that happen within the film. And yeah, it is pretty improvised still. It's very editing driven, but it is a story driven thing rather than documentary. And I think whereas The Lost Day of Childhood was for kind of filmmakers to enjoy,
Hmm.
it was a very like when I made it, I had in mind that the audience would be filmmakers. But with this, I'm just trying to. It's much more for the mainstream, I guess.
Hmm.
And I feel like young men, especially, can really they will really resonate with the film, and that's kind of look. I don't really have a target audience, but my guess is that's the demographic that will really latch onto the film. I hope.
Hmm. And what, in terms of influences, did you have when you were making this movie in particular?
Yeah, so it's a bit controversial to say, but recently Kanye West has not been, a very popular guy.
Hey,
But
the title Egomaniac and Kanye
yeah,
kind of go
yeah,
hand in hand. So,
yeah. So I'm a huge Kanye fan. At least I was. I don't know if I want to keep that label on me,
mhm,
but so his music and not even his music, but the fact that I live with his music was a
mhm,
huge inspiration. And kind of that how I interpret his music was the setting off point on everything in this film.
mhm,
So um yeah, because I basically am a was a diehard fan, and from the things that he discusses and how I interpret them
mhm,
and how I translate them to myself was kind of the setting off point. And I guess the vibe is
mhm.
very Kanye-esque, a lot of Kanye
Yeah.
music. Yeah.
Did
Have
the
you? Oh, go
Oh,
ahead, Ethan.
while we're on this train, did the documentary that came out, was it this year or last year? That three-part Netflix documentary about
yeah,
Kanye, did that have
Genius.
any
Yeah.
influence on this, or was that kind of separate?
I love that documentary. I guess that documentary was part of me actually kind of losing that Kanye fandom. I was a
Hmm.
pretty diehard fan last year, and that documentary was a part of me being like, wow, like this is a human being, like, and we are like, this guy is making mistakes that I don't want to make in my life,
Mm.
you know.
Mhm,
So I guess that documentary is a part of it's very different to that documentary. I would say it's
Nice.
much more narrativist. I feel like that
Mhm.
documentary is kind of like Lost Day-ish, like it has
Yeah.
this footage and everything. So that's kind of cool, like cool little link. But yeah, in terms of the inspiration, I would say Kanye is.
Yeah.
In terms
mhm,
of the feeling behind the film.
mhm.
Right on.
Have you I can't remember, but have you spoken with Ethan Stevens, the filmmaker?
I I
I
have spoken with him. I've done the interview with him, but beyond
Okay.
that, not much. Yeah.
Okay, because the way you talk about the themes of this movie and just the influences and everything, it really reminds me of how you approach Not Now. And when I've
Mm,
seen him tweet about kind of stuff he's working on and all that sort of thing. So I
yeah.
was wondering if there was any, like, if you'd connect with him, because I couldn't remember if you interviewed him at all. But
Yeah, so we were I actually read the script of his next film, and we kind of shared
mm,
notes on that. And I feel like that's the interesting thing, you know, like he has a very different interpretation of Kanye, and I
right.
have a very so it's not like even about Kanye at the end of the day. It's just
Hmm.
how we take those feelings, you know?
Hmm.
And this is how I take that feeling. And I feel like this film, Egomaniac with a Heart of Gold,
Hmm.
is kind of describing my arc as a human being and my development, or
Hmm.
maybe even regression, in 2021.
Right.
And I guess Kanye was just a huge, you know, as a filmmaker, Scorsese says that, you know, as a filmmaker, it's your job to translate how you see the world onto your films. And in 2021, I would look at the world with Kanye instrumentals playing in the back of my head. So that's kind of
Hmm.
how I depict it in the film as well.
Hmm.
Does that
Do
make
you
It's
sense?
cool.
do you use Kanye's music in the film, or is it like original stuff, or is it what's the
This
music
there's
like?
there's a lot of Kanye. There's a
Okay,
lot of Kanye. Yeah.
okay. Because I wasn't sure, because I know some filmmakers in the YouTube sphere, they'll use copyright music and then they won't for other
Yeah.
projects, or they will. I wasn't sure where your stance was on that.
Yeah, so for the first three films, I've given myself the let's just, you know,
Hmm.
or everything is nothing is off limits, you know?
Right. And
Yeah.
it seems like if you took the Kanye music out, it wouldn't be the same movie at all.
Not at all. I feel like it's an integral part of just the vibe, and it's kind of how I envision the scenes in my head as well, listening to his music, thinking about it, even living through some of the stuff. You know, I would live through some of the things, and I would be listening to the songs while living through them. And so, yeah, and I feel like it's a very important part of the project. Even the teaser that I released, the music from that is just some unreleased Kanye music.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's very Kanye, which is it's funny that, you know, it's very controversial at the moment. And I'm kind of losing my Kanye fandom.
Hmm.
Look, I'm still like grateful for the impact that he has made on my life,
Hmm.
but it's just funny that like it feels like a chapter of my life is ending at the moment, you know?
Right. It's always interesting when we grow past like our
Yeah.
sort of artistic mentors or artistic inspirations in a weird way. I know most
Yeah.
filmmakers, I think Zach and Ethan can relate. When everybody gets into movies, yeah, I mean, we've all talked about like you get into Scorsese, Tarantino, Paul Thomas,
Nolan.
Nolan. You get into all of those guys, and then at a certain point, you grow past them, at least in your tastes, or maybe
Yeah.
not even grow past them. Some people stay with them and come back to them, and that's totally fine. I'm not knocking them as filmmakers at all, but it's interesting the journey that we have as filmmakers and artists, because there's certain people that we like look up to and aspire to be and have a deep impact on our lives, and then one day, they just don't, their work doesn't move us, or they do something and it kind of puts us off of them a little bit. It's interesting, that journey, because if I look back 10 years um ago, I can't even remember who my influences were back then, but that was totally, it's totally different from who inspires me now. um
Yeah.
Zach, Ethan, I don't know if you guys can speak to any of this or relate, like in terms of those inspirations and like people we've grown past.
Hmm.
Well, I think you hit it on the head, just that progression and how like I think it's a very common thing that all filmmakers are gonna go through or experience if you stick through it long enough. I agree. I can't quite I mean, I think people like Kevin Smith, for me, someone I still look up to, but isn't someone I look to so much now for like filmmaking inspiration. At least not in like a technical sense, maybe a bit more in like the way he talks about movies and his heart towards movies. I still definitely have a strong relation to, but not so much on the technical side or the story side. Yeah, like I remember we stood outside of like one of his live shows for 4 hours to meet him at like right out of high school because we couldn't go in because it was the 21 and over show.
And we did meet him,
and we did.
That's so cool.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm not out here dying over Kevin Smith stuff as much as I used to.
Did you see Clerks 3 yet?
No.
All right.
I haven't seen any Kevin Smith films. I need to catch up.
Dude, you should watch Tusk.
Tusk? Look, I like am very out. You know, I need to start with like Clerks and work my way up.
I think you'd like his Clerks movies and all that. I think there's a lot of great kind of, I don't know, conversations in those about like what does it mean to, what is this life and all that kind of stuff.
Mallrats is another good one.
I think there's some like deep, well, some people might say it's not deep, but like I think there's, at least on the surface level, they touch on different topics I think you'd be interested in for sure.
Yeah. For sure.
In terms of maybe not so much this Egomaniac, but I just in general, are there any filmmakers working right now or that you know movies have been inspiring you recently?
I don't actually like to get inspiration from movies. Like I like to look at other mediums. So I always had this kind of idea that my first 3 films would feel very musical, and then my like the next 3 films would be like literature, and then maybe the next 3 films would be like full on like just sell out blockbusters, like movies, you know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I view it. I feel like when you are interpreting from a different source of medium, you inject more of yourself. So I'm really fascinated by the self. Like I like to see the artist behind the work in the work. So I try to do that with my films as well.
Right. I think it's funny you say that because I've been feeling a similar way with kind of how I'm working, where I'm not so much looking to other films but different places. Like the movie I'm working on right now is the whole kind of
books, right? Everybody's making adaptation.
Well, before
I've caught up on the podcast.
Well, before that, it was for the Ladanza, which I'm editing. That one, it was the kernel of the idea, like for the full feature
version. Can I just say, Ladanza looks amazing. I am so hyped for Ladanza. Like, oh my god, there's like Ladanza. Like, oh, I'm gonna watch that the second it comes out. Like, I can't. Like, I watched the trailer and I was like, damn. Like, I could have upped my game. Like, what is this? Like, you know, like what is happening? You know?
Did you see the leaked trailer, or did you see the like filming announcement or like wrapped trailer?
I think I'm not sure. I saw something somewhere. And I just remember it was amazing.
We'll have to send you like a
I was like jumping out of my chair. I was like right here watching it. Like,
we'll send you a copy of the preview because
I'd love to see it.
Out of everybody on the YouTube sphere right now, I think you'd appreciate it the most. Because it's very
seems like my type of thing.
Yeah, I think so. I think you'd really like what's going on. Hopefully, I hope you'd like it.
So you were saying that Ladanza is inspired by something from another medium?
Yeah, but philosophy. It was the whole thing came from a philosophy piece of philosophy writing, which I will not share publicly yet because I don't want to give away too much and all that. But it all came from philosophy, and similar to you, it came from bits of music. Came from different artists and all that. So it's this weird kind of collage of different influences, everything except for movies to an extent.
Yeah. And I'm also like, I sorry for cutting you off, but like I also want to say that I'm just inspired by life itself, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like just what happens in life. Like I feel like more than anything, like sure Kanye is an inspiration for Egomaniac, but I feel like more of it is just about my life last year, you know? And
Right.
just the feelings I was having, being on the train and everything seemed black and white, and like, you know, it just that's the feeling I got. And even like this year, you know, like I kind of have an idea of like the next film because of the arc that I've gone through this year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so this life is so inspirational if you just, you know, look for the inspiration within it, I guess.
And
Yeah.
I think it was you, so like a while ago when we talked, you mentioned, sorry, pardon me for the light. When we started this, it was I have these skylights, it was totally light out and it's like getting dark, so I'm like lighting candles to like turn my cell phone flashlight on. Sorry,
No,
that's distracting, but
it's
you said
I wish we did this in October, so it'd be like the Halloween mood.
I know. I think it was you a while back who said that you don't want to be one of those filmmakers, which I totally respect, and I completely agree. You don't want to be one of those filmmakers who's just influenced by movies, because if you're just referencing other movies, your work becomes hollow and kind of shallow in itself.
Yeah.
Which is something I really appreciate about you, because I think there are some filmmakers out there and their only reference point for things is other movies, and it's just a copy of a copy of a copy, and nothing is, you know, it's no longer original, and you have nothing that's interesting to say anymore.
Yeah, I mean, especially like I think certain things are just cliches that you see in movies that you just automatically repeat. Like in Thank God for Drugs, honestly, it was just filled with movie references, and it was actually kind of the thing I was warning against, I guess. Thank God for Drugs was like it was very it was a bit beyond my capacity of what I had lived at the time. Like it was about like it was a love story. Like I never experienced that in real life and all that stuff. So I was kind of projecting what I thought it would be like. And looking back from now, like which I kind of have experienced some of that stuff, it's kind of like I would do it way differently, and it's so much cooler because it's just it's what's the point of making a film if it's not about like if someone else could make the film, what's the point of me making it, I guess.
Right. Exactly. And that's something that I think it's, you know, sorry, I'm lighting another candle. That's something that I wish more filmmakers that they taught you in film school. I think was it Werner Herzog or Ridley Scott? Someone asked them in an interview, like, what should someone do if they want to go into movies? And he was like, don't go to film school, like study philosophy, study sociology, study, you know, science, study anything else except for film, and learn what to make a movie about. And that's just that's important. And I think and I think even when you're making your movie, it can feel more significant. It makes your movie feel like, oh, I actually have something to say. Like with everything else prior to Ladanza, I was like, I felt like a certain way about the movies. But now when I have my movies, like with Ladanza, I'm like, oh, I actually have something to say, and like that's interesting and unique. So it kind of opens you up as an artist a little bit more, which is pretty cool.
It's also just a great hack with dealing with pain in life. You know,
yeah.
There's a line in Egomaniac which says, "Pain is my profession," and I kind of feel that sometimes. You know, like pain, all that stuff is kind of our profession as artists because that's how we become. That's how we broaden our perspective of the world. You know, to broaden your perspective of the world, you got to kind of crush your ideas of the world for a bit, and that's a very it hurts to do that. You know, you got to crush your little bubble to expand the bubble. So yeah,
that line goes so hard. Pain is my profession. But going back to, I guess, more tangible stuff about the movie, is it done? Is the movie finished? No,
it's not done. It will be done though. It will be
will be done. Will be done. How long do you envision it to be?
Probably 50. I have like, look, I would say like 36 minutes are like completely done. So
Nice.
36 minutes, I don't even have to go put my hands on. Like that's color graded, everything is done. So yeah, and then the rest of it, it's not that much that's left. So I guess it'll be like 15 minutes.
Nice.
And the rest of it is like very quick, like bam, bam, bam. Like it's just gaps that I have to like fill in, and I'm a very iterative kind of filmmaker. So like I like the process of filming something, editing it, and then the next time I learn from that stuff. And funny enough, I feel like in Egomaniac, it starts and the acting is like not that good, but I feel like by the end, the acting gets much better, you know, because I'm learning like as you go, and it's a fun. It's just more fun, and I like showing people it. Like for me, like showing people the film is like the whole point, you know. So it's when I released a teaser, I was just like that day, I was just like laying in my bed, be like, "Oh, I'm so happy that people are finally watching something after like 2 years."
Yeah.
We were happy too.
No, we were extremely. I texted. We have a chat with the RC boys up in Yakima, and I texted them. I was like, "Mridul's thing is out. His his preview. Go check it out right now." And we were just like all hyped in the chat. We were like, "Be like, yes, it's here," and it's like the king is returned. Yeah, that's great. And so, when can people expect to see this movie?
It'll definitely be out this year. Like 100%, it will be out this year. Aiming for. I don't want to say the date that I'm aiming for, but yeah, 100% this year. It's locked in. Yeah, it'll definitely be out this year. Like even if it's not done, I'll just release it December 31st. Like it's just how it is gonna be.
Right. Awesome.
I respect that.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, because if you release the preview, that's the thing that excited me the most. It was like coming December or coming this year. Because if you had the preview and it was like coming next year, like that's cool and everything, but I want to see it right away.
Yeah, with you guys like released the preview like a week before, right? It's just I remember with Video Carnage, the preview came out, and then it's like next week or something like that, and I was like, yo, the Video Carnage trailer was just so good. Like I'm getting like goosebumps thinking about that trailer. Like I was like, damn, like I feel like with the YouTube space, the boundaries is still being pushed, and you can only hope to just like push those boundaries a little more, and kind of show people that a lot of stuff is possible. You know, like, I feel like if I showed myself Egomaniac while I was making The Lost Day of Childhood, like my mind would have been like, oh damn, like I can do this. You know, like yeah. So we're inspiring people as well. So
yeah. And so what's been, I mean, that's another thing to talk about. The YouTube space has changed quite significantly since we kind of connected 2 years or a year ago, about like middle of 2021. YouTube space has changed. And what's kind of your perspective on it? Because I feel like for a brief moment of time, there was a lot of cross-pollination with us and Dan Watts and Ethan Stevens and other filmmakers here and there. And since then, this entire huge community has come forth. And now it's kind of, we used to know everybody within the kind of YouTube filmmaking community to an extent. Now there's too many to keep track of, and people are releasing new movies every week, which we think is awesome and we love it. So what's kind of your perspective on the whole landscape of where YouTube was, this community, when we started off a few years ago versus now?
Yeah, so I'm gonna take this in an odd direction. So when I heard of like, people trying to go to Mars and into space travel, I was like, damn, that's really cool. But then a part of me was like, damn, like the people on Mars are gonna be making movies as well. And then there's just gonna be like a whole like galaxy of people making movies. And like I'm gonna be utterly insignificant in this whole scheme of things. Like this is me in high school, like while I just like made like a few short films and I was like kind of dreaming about my life. And I was like, damn, there's gonna be a whole galaxy of people making movies, and it's gonna suck because no one's gonna notice me. And I think over time, like I've realized, and I do think that's gonna happen. Like this is gonna age very well. Like there's gonna be interstellar travel happening, and there's gonna be movies like everywhere. Like and then someone's gonna be like, "Yo, like that filmmaker's just from Mars, bro. He like captured some aliens." Like it's gonna be there's gonna be so many movies that it's literally gonna be like physically impossible for you to even watch like the 5-star movies. You know how every year there's like 5-star movies? It's just gonna be unlimited supply of 5-star movies. Anyways, so I feel like YouTube is kind of that, like it's just there's so many people making movies that on the surface you can be like, oh, like how am I gonna get noticed? But I think I don't think it like I think it's great, and like now I'm like excited for the interstellar travel because I feel like life was all about people reaching their potential, and when you don't reach your potential, like the ghost of your potential kind of haunts you for your whole life. And that's like my biggest fear, the ghost of my potential haunting me, knowing that I could have done more. And if we just show people what's possible, then like I want humanity to be like on the A game. If everyone is on the A game, then we're just gonna watch better movies. We're gonna we're gonna be inspired by philosophy while watching Ladanza. It's gonna be like a better world. And I do think that what we're doing is it's bigger than just movies. I think it's showing people what's possible. And I think it's great. I feel like still not enough people are making movies. I go to film school. I don't know anyone who's made a movie. It's a very like rare thing still, and I want everybody to be making movies if that's something that they want to do. At least try it out. I feel like if you want to be a filmmaker, make a movie. So I feel like it's awesome. The best stuff will always rise to the top. Yeah, I think it's great.
That's awesome.
Well, Mridul, this is the time of the show where we jump into some of our regularly scheduled questions. So the first one we always ask is, what are you working on? So obviously you're working on this next big feature, but are there other things we don't know about? Are there plans moving?
Yeah, I mean, I am working on the next film. I have a pretty good idea of what the film is going to be, but it will change its shape over time. But yeah, so I kind of view it's the end of a certain project is a really good time to think of the next project for me, because I just naturally just come up with all these ideas. So it's just kind of a natural part of my brain to start thinking about what I want to do next, what I want to improve at, all that stuff.
Are there specific things that while you were shooting Egomaniac that while it didn't work for this, you're like, I have to save this for the next one or for something down the line?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like with Egomaniac, I really realized that I'm pretty good at kind of when things are moving, but when it's just dialogue, that's something I really have to get better at. And I do think at the end of the film it gets a lot better. But I do think like the next film, like film 3, like I'm gonna just tirelessly, relentlessly work on how to direct actors, and just kind of master that. And so that's definitely like gonna be one of the focuses for film 3.
Awesome. Can't wait to see it.
And to get in there too, part of your work is you are in film school. And so how is film school going for you so far with everything going on?
Yeah, so I actually dropped out of film school last year. So
one of us. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, so I dropped out last year. Yeah. And yeah, so I've just been working on the films. Yeah, and that's no film school for me.
What was the reason for, if you care to say, if it's personal, don't feel obligated, but can you share why you left film school?
just to like keep my sanity, I guess. Yeah, I don't think I have to explain it anymore. Like it's just
That's
I
fair.
felt
Totally
like
fair.
my brain slowly being brainwashed, and yeah, gotta. I feel like this year has been about fighting the brainwashing, which you'll see this stuff in film 3.
Did you ever
Uh,
tell one of your professors that you had already made a feature film? And did they have any reaction to that, or did they not know?
I didn't really tell anyone because none of the professors really liked me because I'd question them too much. I was like the guy in class that would like question everything that the professors would say. Like I remember the first day, one of the first days, my screenwriting professor was like, "Your character always has to be likable," and I was like, "Yo, have you seen Taxi Driver? Have you seen all these movies?" And I just started listing them off, and it turns out like she hadn't seen Taxi Driver, so like like
How did they
it's
get their
like
job?
exactly. So it's yeah, it just yeah, it is
Yeah.
what it is.
That's fair. That's fair. Zach, you have our next question, I think.
Yes. Our next question that we usually ask is, what have you been watching lately?
What I've been watching.
Yeah.
Oh, let me quickly check. I did this last time as well, I think. So recently I watched Joel Haver's new film. That's the last film I watched. And the ending of that film, I don't know
I
if
haven't
you guys
seen
have
it
seen
yet.
it, but the
No.
ending of the film is really good. Like it is, the ending of the film is like some Mridul Chhibber type stuff, I think. Yeah, so I watched Jonah Hill's new documentary about his therapist,
Mhm.
which it was a cute little movie.
Nice.
I feel like it with a documentary that's like information based. I don't know how useful it is because you don't really retain much of the information. Like they gave all these techniques of how to like improve your mental health, and I feel like it's kind of hard to retain the information in a documentary. And it was much more like, but it did have some. It was a good documentary. I'm not gonna diss it, but it was good. Yeah, and I watched Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, which was like a big step up from the recent Marvel movies. I feel, and that was
Oh yeah.
pretty cool. Um, yeah, that's basically all. Oh, I do want to mention. Okay, so September, everybody hates him, and I don't know anything about Marilyn Monroe. But
Yeah.
that I think that's like might be my favorite movie of the year. Maybe my second favorite. It was just like such a. It was everybody hated it, but I completely was in love with it. Yeah.
I have yes, I think Zach and Caleb from RC, I think when we were all talking about it when they came out, because we watched it and I was like, whether or not it's ethical or not, I think that's one question. That's something worth debating. But like, I kind of enjoyed it. Like I found it like very impressive in certain ways. Um,
Yeah.
and to see everybody tear it apart was fascinating. I think it was a good case study in like media literacy and stuff like that. Like I'm not gonna like this could turn into a blonde podcast very easily, but
Oh
like
yeah.
I'm not gonna get
We
too
still
into it.
need to
But
do one.
yes,
I know
but
we
yes,
should.
I kind of I go back and forth on it, but like it made me think. The filmmaking was beautiful. I think it's a question of ethics, sure, for sure, absolutely. But I was kind of captured, like I was like what do you call it? I was kind of captivated by the movie. Yeah, so like I can
Yeah.
totally see where you're coming from. Yeah.
Me and Mohit had like a 4-hour video call after we both watched it, just like analyzing it, and oh my god, like it's provocative, and I think I just lean towards like very provocative things. So I guess that, and I always give like the artist the benefit of the doubt. So I guess that's why I'm like more lenient towards it. But once you just like give into the experience, I feel like it's like the most like impactful film experience that I might have had this year. Like images like come up regularly while I'm living my life, and I feel like that's like a
Right.
huge reason. Like it's like when I'm in like a dark room, I'll think of House. It's like that kind of thing. You know? And so it's when a film can do that, when it lives on in your mind, it's I think it's doing something good.
Yeah, that's a movie where I think what I would tell people is like, well, you have to go into it knowing that all of it's fake. Like you have to know
Yeah.
that, and you have to know and like rather than saying like, this is terrible that it's fake and this is terrible that they're using it like that. Like question like, see that it's a fake story and recognize these iconographic Hollywood images and what they're doing with those images, like rather than like attacking it and assigning intention and saying you're doing this, so this is bad. I tell people like, ask why and what effect, like why did they make this movie look literally exactly like all the old Hollywood photos? Why
Yeah.
is this story fake? Why is it showing the subject matter in this way? Ask why, and I think that's a much more interesting discussion than, it does this, so this is bad. You can still think that, but I think asking why an artist does something and what effect that has, I think that's a far more productive conversation than just it's doing this, so it's bad. It's doing this, so it's bad. So it's like that's where, yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to go too deep into it, but yes, like I think it's there's a lot worth talking about in Blonde, good and bad.
I do think
in between.
Whenever you're watching a movie, you have to the filmmaker made it as an experience for you. And if someone is going into a film not open to the experience, I don't even think you've watched the film, because if you go into the movie with the thought, oh my god, like with the knowledge of, oh, the whole internet is blowing up about it and no one likes it, and the experience is not how it was intended to be. And on like a basic level, I don't think that cinema is the right medium to learn things in an information level. I don't think that cinema is the place to be learning about cell structure. Like I don't think that's where it is at. I think cinema is a place to learn through emotion. So that's kind of how I view all of filmmaking, and I guess that explains why I liked Blonde.
Yeah, very fair. Fellas, I guess we can all answer that question. What have you all been watching? Maybe Mridul can chime in on all that.
I rewatched The Green Knight 2 nights ago because I got the new special edition A24 pack. So it has like a bunch of like concept art and some cool stuff in it. And it has the first like a big excerpt of the story of the Green Knight, like with annotations on the side, line by line from the director of like where they pulled from that line. So that's been fun to read through.
That's a very Ethan movie as well, I feel like, in terms of its like the narrative, and the ending of the Green Knight is so good. Like it's amazing ending.
One of my favorite shots of any movie in the last 10 years, it's the shot from behind when he's like a king and he's like going through a battle, and it's from the back and he's just like got his crown on. Like that shot, I'm like, I want that movie. That shot I need as a movie. Like, I think that's all I've watched recently though. I think I talked in our last podcast, I watched Barbarian and Possum. So yeah, it's been a light week for me in terms of movie watching. I had a very, very busy last week, so not as much.
It's crazy that we haven't spoken since like Wild Boys.
I know.
The bell rings, Two Little Ghosts, all that. Like it's crazy that we haven't discussed all of that. But yeah.
I know. We need to. It's like we got like 4 podcasts we need to record here to get through all of that.
We need to catch up. New podcast.
Yeah, just do a whole other one.
Yeah.
Zach, what have you been watching?
Well, I've been watching a bunch of noir movies, but we can't talk about why. And then I also rewatched the first Avatar with my parents since they hadn't seen it yet.
Me
So I was
too.
like,
I
sat
just
down.
rewatched that. Yeah.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's on my list.
So that was fun introducing them to it. And I think at least my mom was kind of surprised at how much she liked it, but it was very good to revisit, especially since I learned apparently I watched the special edition the first time around and I watched the theatrical version this time and I was like, there's so many things missing. And then I was like,
Right.
oh, that's why.
Right. Yeah.
But,
No,
yeah.
I had Raquel and Amanda were over yesterday for movies, and we watched Avatar because Zach, you're coming too, but we're gonna go
Oh,
see
yeah.
Avatar opening night, and so we were like, we gotta watch this first. So we just rewatched Avatar again. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. Radul, what's your
I love
opinion on that?
Avatar.
Oh, you love it? Okay, good.
Yeah, I remember like first watching it. Like it's one of those movies that you remember when you first watch it, at least for me. Yeah, it's beautiful. Like just the world, like when a filmmaking can just like immerse you within a world. And I feel like James Cameron, everybody kind of doubted him that, like, oh, now you're gonna make Avatar 2, but it's coming out and I feel like everybody is kind of getting hyped about it. And I wouldn't be surprised if it, really kind of comes back into the cultural scene, especially with like all those sequels coming out soon.
Oh, yeah.
It could be like the new Star Wars, like honestly.
Honestly, yeah.
He made two movies that are considered two of the greatest sequels of all time, Terminator 2 and Aliens, and he's broken box office records 2 times. Like the 3 highest grossing movies of all time, 2 of those are James Cameron movies. I feel like all the ingredients are there for him to have another smash hit, and I'm excited. Like I'm pumped for it.
And we haven't had that like huge blockbuster after COVID as well. So I feel like it's really,
I think the only one that's really come close has been Top Gun Maverick, really.
Yeah.
Which was a very good movie, but
and Avatar 2, it's not even a legacy sequel, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of movies, kind of like Top Gun, where it's like there's an old movie everybody loved. We're gonna do it again because people love it, right? Nothing wrong with that, but this isn't that. And it's also not like Marvel 5 new movies every single year where they're just pumping it out on a machine. This guy started working on the sequels 13 years ago, and he's been working on them ever since. That's like the antidote to like everything that's wrong with Hollywood or whatever.
Yeah.
Like if you don't like Marvel movies in the MCU, I would assume you would like this because it's kind of going back to, no, let's take all of our time to make this movie, do it right and get it out and enjoy like spectacle and take our time and put a lot of care and effort into it. Yeah. Not that Marvel doesn't, but I'm just
voicing the opinions of the people.
Right.
So I've never seen Titanic, and I've always made a point as like, oh yeah, I've never seen Titanic. If this movie breaks, like, if it lands in like the top 5 box office, I'll watch Titanic.
What?
Maybe even top 10.
Do we have any predictions as to how it will do? Like when it's all said and done, how Avatar 2 will do box office?
I'd be curious to see if it lands like a re-release, like a theatrical re-release, like some other movies have been experiencing, like Morbius and
Father Stew.
Top Gun, Father Stew. Well, didn't Avengers Endgame get a re-release?
It did, yeah. With like some unfinished scenes or something.
And Spider-Man No Way Home. Yeah. So I'm anticipating it would probably get a second, either a second release or a very extended release.
I love that it's about water because James Cameron has been like making a few documentaries about like the deep sea, and I feel like he's gonna really like make this. Like, I feel like it's gonna feel like we're entering a whole nother world with this water stuff. Like, I don't think it's gonna feel like exactly like, oh, we're returning back to this familiar world. I feel like it's gonna be like a whole nother experience. Like, very excited.
It's gonna be cool.
It's gonna be fun. Yeah. Well, we can talk with you for hours and hours, Mridul. But I think this is a good point to wrap up our podcast. Family's shouting. Mridul, where can people find you if they want to watch your films or find you on social media?
Yeah, so I'm sure I'll be linked in the description or whatever. If someone really wants to find me, they can do that. They're smart people, I'm sure. Yeah, so Egomaniac with the Heart of Gold releasing December. I'm excited. Yeah, I'm just very excited about everything. I feel like finally, like I have the ball somewhat rolling, and I just can't wait to just make some great stuff in the next few months.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on. You're one of our favorite filmmakers, Mridul, and it was a pleasure getting to talk to you about your new movie.
Pleasure talking to you guys as always.